If you're okay with it, shall we stay at a hotel together? After missing the last train due to overtime, I was stranded. I found a woman looking disheveled in the hotel district. Unable to leave her stumbling around, I invited her to stay at the hotel I had booked. She kept her head down the whole time. When she took a bath, I was surprised by how cute she actually was. What could have caused her to be in such a state? Upon asking, she disheveled she had been in a difficult environment. The next day, Mr. Stevens, a key client, unexpectedly showed up at my house. I want to make a $12 million deal with you in charge. What? My name is John. I'm a regular office worker turning 30 this year. As a salesman, I've traveled to various companies, securing numerous contracts. I'm not the best, but for a 30-year-old, I've done reasonably well. Wow, as expected from you, John. Thanks for your hard work today. By the way, I heard there's a restaurant with a great view. Want to go there together? I'd love to go with you, John. Can you teach me the secrets of negotiation next time? Thanks to this, and I say this with some embarrassment, I was quite popular with the female employees in the office. I was well liked not only by my subordinates and peers but also by my female superiors. For me, having women approach me like that was a great feeling. It boosted my confidence, making me feel recognized as a man. It also reassured me that I was on the right path as an office worker, keeping me motivated. However, that was all a year ago. Now, no one wants to talk to me. And for good reason. Exactly a year ago today, I made a mistake. This mistake marked the beginning of my downward spiral. One day a year ago, I had gone shopping at a department store at a colleague's request. Even though I had secured contracts and achieved results, I was still an employee with less than 10 years in the company. Naturally, performing menial tasks for my boss was part of the job. But that day's task was not for my boss, it was to buy a gift box on behalf of my colleague, Tom. If you ask why I was doing a menial task for a colleague, it wouldn't make sense logically. When things get busy, we help each other out. It's a habit from my school days of cooperating with friends and classmates. It's been a habit since then. So, I bought the gift box for Tom and delivered it to his boss, Kevin. But Kevin said, "This isn't the right one." No way, I made a mistake. I was sure I had bought the exact gift box Tom had instructed me to get. In this company, there are about 5 specific types of gift boxes we use to apologize to clients. It was one of those. Even though the instructions were verbal, there was no way I got it wrong. However, what came out of Kevin's mouth was a completely different name. Mistakes happen, but why did you buy the one thing our client hates? Did you do this on purpose? It turned out that the gift box Tom instructed me to buy was the one thing the client disliked. Kevin, being a suspicious person, thought I did it intentionally. It was the worst-case scenario. It was just a single gift box. An errand I ran for a colleague, not even for myself. I never imagined it would cause such backlash. I apologized to Kevin, explaining there was no ill intent. And so, by going to buy the exact box of sweets that Kevin had mentioned, the matter was resolved once again. Later, when I asked Tom again, he mentioned the same gift box name Kevin had. But didn't you say something different before, Tom? No, I said the one with the traditional Japanese sweets. Get it together. I got yelled at by Kevin because of you. Seriously, help me out here. Despite him assigning the task to me, Tom complained about the inconvenience it caused him. In the end, I owed him another favor for the trouble caused. Looking back, it was ridiculous. Next, Tom asked me to do some clerical work that involved reviewing the documents and reflecting them in the graphs. Apparently, it's something important that Tom's team will use in an upcoming business meeting. I worked on it during my free time, based on his instructions. When I handed it to Kevin, he said, "All these numbers are slightly off." I quickly went back to my desk to check the documents Tom had given me. But the data had been swapped with slightly different figures. After the second mistake, Kevin, already suspicious, became even more distrustful of me. Despite my sincere apology, he didn't forgive me as easily as before and gave me a lengthy reprimand. I left with heavy steps. In hindsight, I should have taken measures to prevent a repeat of the mistake. But I never imagined a colleague would go to such lengths to set me up. Once again, I ended up owing Tom another favor. This cycle of favors continued, and every time Tom offloaded a task onto me, I failed to complete it properly. My repeated failures spread throughout the company like ripples. The ripples reached Kevin and eventually my direct boss, Lisa. Eventually, I lost the trust of those around me. We can't entrust important work to someone who makes such simple mistakes repeatedly. My hard-earned reputation crumbled. Until today, I've been relegated to menial tasks instead of sales duties. Even menial tasks are important and need to be done by someone. But the volume of these tasks increased, leading to constant overtime. Today, I'm working late again. I haven't been home in a week. But even if I go home, it's just to eat convenience store food and sleep. I haven't been cleaning or taking out the trash. My room must be a mess by now. These thoughts felt like distant memories. I said I haven't been home in a week, but even before that, I'd only been back a few times. Missing the last train due to overtime, I often stayed at capsule hotels, internet cafes, and business hotels. Before I knew it, this had become my daily routine. How long will this life continue? What am I even doing? I muttered to myself as I walked home, missing the last train again. That night, I was wandering around the hotel district looking for a place to stay. I prefer not to stay at the same hotel 2 nights in a row. I don't want the hotel staff to form a negative impression of me. However, if there's no other available hotel besides the one from the previous night, I reluctantly head back there. They must be thinking, there he is again. The thought of being judged made me feel even more depressed. Of course, missing the last train and being unable to go home due to overtime was already quite disheartening. While wandering around, I saw a woman walking towards me, looking out of place for the hotel district. She was dressed in tattered clothes, carrying a shabby travel bag, with her face hidden. She looked more like a runaway than a homeless person. She clearly had nowhere to go. Her weak and unsteady steps made it seem like she might collapse at any moment. But everyone around her pretended not to see. Even if they noticed her, they just gave her cold looks without saying anything. Seeing her, I felt a pang of sadness. I couldn't help but relate to her, being met with cold stares after repeatedly making mistakes at work. Before I knew it, I found myself calling out to her. "Excuse me, are you okay? You seem like you have nowhere to go." She didn't respond, keeping her head down. I turned around and pointed in the direction she was heading. "There's a women's hotel just around the corner. Would you like me to show you the way?" She still didn't reply. But she didn't turn away or leave when I stopped to listen and made my suggestion. It seemed like she would follow me if I walked. Feeling this, I headed to the women's capsule hotel I had recommended to her. When we arrived, I handed her a few bills from my wallet. "This might be unnecessary, but please use it if you need. I don't spend much money since I'm always working, so don't hesitate." She still hid her face but didn't refuse the money. Since she took the money, I thought she would be okay. Thinking that, I turned around to go back the way I came, intending to walk away from her. Then, suddenly, she grabbed my arm. She was clutching the crumpled bills I had given her. "I'm underage. Can I stay here alone?" A woman spoke while looking down. I was surprised and confused by her speaking for the first time, by having my arm grabbed. And I also was surprised and confused by the fact that she was underage. I stood there for a moment, frozen, trying to process everything. I realized it would be hard for a minor to stay in a hotel alone. But I couldn't just abandon her. After some thought, I made a suggestion. "There's a net cafe I usually stay at. Minors probably can't stay alone in most places, so if you're okay with it, shall we go there together?" She nodded while still holding my arm. Despite my invitation, I felt uneasy about her lack of caution. Nevertheless, I decided to take her to the net cafe. Feeling awkward about how smoothly things were going, we walked to the net cafe. I rented a larger room since we would be staying together. A man in a suit and a girl dressed like a homeless person. The odd combination made the clerk raise an eyebrow, so I felt the need to explain. "Just to clarify, there's nothing shady going on here, so you don't need to worry." Even though I didn't stay here every night, the clerk seemed to recognize me. Upon hearing this, the clerk smiled warmly. I wasn't sure what that smile meant, but at least we were able to use the room, so I felt relieved as we headed there. It was my first time using a room for two. Unlike the usual small rooms, this one was spacious and even had a projector, and it was a lockable room. There's a laundromat along the hallway you passed earlier. You can use that for laundry. There's also a shower you can use. As I waited for her, exhaustion hit me hard, and I let out a big sigh as soon as I sat on the sofa. But after just a few minutes, I realized something. Wait, does this mean we're going to sleep together? Also, if she's underage, won't I get in trouble for taking her here? This thought triggered a cascade of work-related anxieties in my mind. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. When I woke up, a beautiful stranger with wet hair was peering at my face. Who are you? My words seemed to shock her, and she looked dejected. That's so mean. I woke you up because I was worried you'd catch a cold sleeping on the sofa. I'm sorry. Are you the girl from before? Yes, who else would it be? You were looking down the whole time earlier, so I couldn't really see your face. I was surprised by how cute you are. What? Oh, I also bought some dinner. You must be hungry. Want to eat together? She nodded again. Maybe because she had taken a shower, she seemed more lively than before. We sat around the small table and eagerly devoured the convenience store food together. By the way, what's your name? Jessica. She answered with her mouth full of food. Watching her, I found her as cute as a small animal, like a squirrel. Take your time. I handed her a bottle of tea. She took it and gulped it down, along with the food in her mouth. After a breath, she introduced herself again. Jessica. 18 years old. Wow. You really are 18. I am almost double your age. You just believe me because I said so. I could be lying, you know. There's no reason for you to lie to a stranger like me. And no one would lie about being a minor if they weren't. True. So, what's your name? Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm John. I'll be 30 this year. 30 isn't old at all. Coming from an 18-year-old, it sounds sarcastic. We finished our meal and chatted casually. As we talked, her smiles became more frequent, as if our initial meeting had been a lie. Seeing her relax, I felt my daily stress melting away. I decided to ask the question that had been on my mind. Hey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but why were you wandering around the hotel district in that state? Her smile vanished instantly. I knew she had her reasons. But seeing her reaction, my heart tightened. I apologized and tried to switch to a lighter topic. I can't expect you to share such a heavy story with someone you just met. I'm sorry. Surprisingly, my apology seemed to prompt her to start talking. No, actually, it's more rude not to say anything after you've been so kind to me. You don't have to push yourself. But sometimes it helps to talk to someone. You're so kind, John. Doing all this for a stranger like me. It's just a coincidence. I wouldn't do this for just anyone. Haha, you're making me feel special. We've only known each other for a few hours, I couldn't feel that way. I'm just a gentleman. When I saw you walking, I felt a connection and couldn't just walk away. I see. But enough about me. Tell me your story, Jessica. When I saw you, I thought you might be a runaway. Well, I guess you could say that. I might be a runaway. She gave a slightly troubled smile. But it was different from the smile she had earlier. This one was pained. I was born and raised in a typical family. It was just me, my mom, and my dad. They were always happy together, and I loved them both very much. Even so, you ran away? She nodded. Jessica had explained that when she entered middle school, her once happy family fell apart because of a tragic event. Her mother died in a car accident. After that, she and her father spent their days consumed by grief, taking time off from school and work. Even after the funeral, the sadness lingered, but Jessica tried to move forward by going back to school. Her friends and teachers supported her, helping her cope with the loss. But her father reacted differently. He turned to alcohol and gambling to drown his sorrow. He had always been somewhat isolated at work. He worked for his family, but losing his beloved wife might have made him feel like his family had fallen apart. He might have lost his reason to work. He changed completely, drowning himself in alcohol and gambling, losing his job in the process. He was burning through our savings rapidly. If my father wouldn't work, then I would. Out of consideration for my father, who was struggling after losing his wife, I decided to support him until he could get back on his feet. Thinking this way, Jessica started a part-time job to support the family while still attending school. But she soon realized that part-time work after school wasn't enough to cover their living expenses. So, she started working day and night, whenever she wasn't in school. Unaware of her efforts, her father continued to waste their savings until they were completely depleted. After that, it would have been great if he had come to his senses and started working again for the sake of the family and Jessica. But things didn't go so smoothly. After my father spent all his savings, he started relying on my earnings next. Until then, she hadn't told him about her part-time jobs. Every time she came home late from her part-time job, her father would question her. She made up stories about hanging out with friends, but it seemed her father had caught on. Despite her efforts to resist, her father ended up spending all the money she earned on alcohol and gambling. To make more money, I thought I should cut down on school hours. She started by being late or leaving early, but eventually dropped out due to financial pressures. She took on more jobs. But her father wasn't satisfied and began to physically abuse her. Unsurprisingly, she found it increasingly difficult to go home. She confided in a female senior at one of her part-time jobs, who invited her to stay at her place. At first, she was staying out of goodwill, but that didn't last long. Soon, a female senior started charging her an exorbitant amount of money as rent, and gradually, that senior began to treat her as a nuisance. That's terrible. It's no better than living at home. Yes, but looking back, it was better than being abused. Jessica tried to seek help from her boss, Mike, at the part-time job, but it was too late. Before she could talk to him, her senior had already fed him lies about Jessica. The rumors were terrible, accusing Jessica of staying at various men's houses and seducing them, stealing money, and begging. She had no idea about these rumors. Of course, Mike had no way of knowing the truth. When she went to talk to him, he fired her, citing her alleged behavior as the reason. She only learned about the horrible rumors when a colleague told her as she was leaving the job. She realized she couldn't stay at her senior's house any longer. With no place to go, she found herself wandering aimlessly. You couldn't go back to your abusive father's house either, right? No. I didn't want to go back. After living like a homeless person for a few days, I found her, leading to our current situation. Listening to her story, I couldn't help but remember the unfair treatment I'd faced from my colleagues over the past year. Being wronged by colleagues, finding yourself labeled as the villain with no one to help you. She had been betrayed by a trusted senior at her job and lost her place to live. Our situations felt oddly similar. That must have been really tough. Yes. Actually, I've also been deceived by colleagues for the past year and treated as the bad guy at work. Really? Yes, because of that, even though I'm in sales, I've been doing nothing but menial tasks every day. I see. But compared to what you've been through, my situation is nothing. Still, if someone like me can manage to keep going, you can too. I smiled at her. She looked at me and smiled back. Thank you for encouraging me. Well, I hope it helps. No, it really does. No one's ever helped me this much or encouraged me before. Hearing that makes me feel better. I wondered if my attempt to encourage her had actually helped. Anyway, it's late. Let's get some rest. I told her, covering myself with a blanket and falling asleep. The next morning, I was lucky enough to have a day off. I couldn't just leave Jessica with nowhere to go, so I invited her to my place. Not knowing how she would react, I nervously made the suggestion. Contrary to my worries, Jessica seemed to trust me completely and happily accepted. We took the first train to my home. As I inserted the key into my apartment door, I remembered how messy my place was. Just a heads up, my place might be a bit messy. Don't worry. It's fine. Pushed by her encouragement, I opened the door, revealing a scene worse than I'd remembered. The hallway leading to the living room was lined with overstuffed trash bags. Even from the entrance, the living room looked like a disaster zone with garbage strewn everywhere. Wow! She must have found it more overwhelming than she imagined. She was at a loss for words. Jessica, are you ready for this? I swallowed hard, turning to her nervously. She met my eyes, slapped her cheeks a few times to brace herself, and replied, Yes. This is nothing compared to what I've faced. She was surprisingly resilient. But as she stepped into the living room, she was struck speechless again by the sheer chaos. I, too, was stunned by the extent of the mess, unable to find a clear spot to step. Are you okay? I asked again. She seemed to need more motivation, so she slapped her cheeks a few more times. Yes, I'm fine. Her cheeks were now quite puffy. The mess was so severe that some areas had trash piled up to our knees, making it hard to walk. This is something else. Navigating through the knee-high trash was difficult, so Jessica helped me move forward. Her unintentional physical contact made my heart race a bit. Despite the situation, I couldn't help but feel that way. It must be a guy thing. Well, let's start cleaning. I'm really sorry you have to help clean right after I invited you. No, I'm happy to help and repay your kindness from last night. With that, she began cleaning efficiently. Her efficiency was such that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her a professional cleaner. She moved with such speed and precision. Even though I should have been leading the effort, it felt more like I was assisting her. In fact, I couldn't keep up with Jessica's pace, and it felt like I might be thrown out like trash. Eventually, the living room floor began to emerge. What I thought would take a whole day of cleaning was finished by evening thanks to her efficient and thorough work. She didn't just throw out the trash, she also cleaned all the water areas in the house, and the kitchen, which had been buried under dirty dishes, was spotless. To my surprise, a delicious smell was coming from the kitchen. Jessica had started cooking after finishing the cleaning. Having a clean house and homemade food after so long felt incredible. Not only did you help clean, but you're also cooking. I don't know how to thank you. Like I said, I'm repaying you for last night. And I'm happy to be invited to your home. What a polite and kind person she was. I couldn't believe she had been living like a homeless person just a few days ago. Dinner's ready. It's simple, but please enjoy. I tasted her cooking. It's delicious. You're a great cook, Jessica. You'll make a wonderful wife someday. Really? I hope so. She looked a bit uncertain as she watched me eat. That caught my attention, but I was too focused on her delicious cooking. Is it really that good? She seemed anxious, watching me devour the food. Yes, absolutely. Come on, join me. She looked surprised. Are you sure? Of course. Food tastes better when you eat it together. She seemed taken aback at first, but then smiled and sat across from me to eat. I savored the rare pleasure of sharing a meal with someone. As we chatted and enjoyed our dinner, the doorbell suddenly rang. It was already prime time. This was the time I would usually be busy with overtime at the office. Having the lights on at this hour was unusual. I thought it might be the landlord checking in. But the intercom screen showed a stranger, an elderly man with white hair. Yes, who is it? My name is Stevens. Stevens? The name sounded familiar. And the man on the monitor also seemed familiar. Mr. Stevens? Yes, the man who suddenly appeared at my house was Mr. Stevens, the CEO of a major company that is a significant client of my workplace. But why was he here? If he needed to see me, it would make more sense for him to visit the office and ask for me directly. Moreover, I wasn't in charge of his company. I couldn't comprehend the situation at all. I'll open the door now. With a brain muddled with confusion, I realized I couldn't leave Mr. Stevens waiting outside. I headed to the door and grabbed the doorknob. My heart pounding, I nervously opened the door to find Mr. Stevens standing there, exuding an air of authority. How can I help you? Wait, is that you? Just as I spoke, Jessica's voice, mixed with surprise and excitement, called out to Mr. Stevens from behind me. Oh. So you were here. I was worried about you, Jessica. Mr. Stevens addressed her as Jessica? As I tried to process their seemingly familiar relationship, Jessica approached the door. Wait, you two know each other? Yes, his company is one of our clients, and we've met before. Really? What a coincidence. No, the bigger surprise is your relationship with Mr. Stevens. I was utterly confused. Well, Mr. Stevens is a regular at the place where I used to work part-time. He always opened a bottle of wine whenever I was there. He's a kind older gentleman. Gentleman? Her casual term for Mr. Stevens made me bite my tongue. Jessica, you shouldn't call Mr. Stevens that, he is a CEO. Ha? I didn't know Mr. Stevens was a CEO. I prefer to keep that low-key. Oh, I see. Despite saying that, she didn't seem particularly surprised. Thank you for always taking care of him. Wait, Jessica? Ha ha ha, Jessica always amuses me. Just being around her brings happiness. Mr. Stevens didn't have his usual tense demeanor. The way he looked at Jessica was kind, almost like a father looking at his child. It became clear that their relationship was more than just that of a regular and a customer. Right? Don't you agree? Yes, Jessica really does create a warm atmosphere just by being there. Exactly. Mr. Stevens, why don't you come inside? It's not comfortable standing and talking here. You're right. I'll come in. It's a bit small, but please, come in. I was deeply relieved that we had cleaned the apartment the day before. The three of us sat down in the living room. After serving tea, I asked Mr. Stevens about his purpose for visiting. Mr. Stevens explained that he had been searching for Jessica out of concern. Jessica recounted to him the same story she had told me about her recent experiences. And that's how I got fired from my part-time job a few days ago. Mr. Stevens listened, a vein throbbing on his forehead. Such behavior is unforgivable. To first approach kindly and then treat you as a nuisance is despicable. But maybe I was at fault too. I probably did something that made my senior uncomfortable, taking advantage of her kindness. No, even if that were the case, responding with harassment and spreading false rumors is inexcusable. Don't you agree, John? Absolutely. If someone has an issue, they should speak up. Spreading lies and ruining someone's reputation is cowardly. And despite all the hardships you've faced, you've endured even more recently, Jessica. From the way Mr. Stevens spoke, it was clear he knew about her life. But how did you know I was here? Finding your location is simple if I ask the right people. His extensive network was impressive. Still, I was shocked that he tracked her down and came all the way here. Noticing my reaction, Mr. Stevens gave me a piercing look. You seem like you have something to say. No, I'm just impressed. But coming here means something significant must have happened. Mr. Stevens sighed deeply. Indeed. Yesterday, I visited your usual part-time job spot, and a man was there, shouting your name repeatedly. A man? Yes, I asked the staff, and apparently, he claimed to be your father. What? Jessica's expression shifted from happiness to confusion and fear. When I looked again, he was on his knees in front of Mike, begging desperately, "My daughter is missing. Do you know where she is?" It was surprising, given what you had told me about him being abusive. From Jessica's stories, I had a terrible impression of her father. His sudden appearance at her workplace was concerning. I couldn't ignore it. When I spoke to him, he broke down, saying, "I don't need money anymore, I realize I was wrong. I'll go to jail if I have to. I just need to know my daughter is safe." Hearing that, she must have pictured the scene in her mind. She quietly shed tears. "When I heard you were fired, I intended to offer you a job at my company. But first, Jessica, do you want to see your father?" She responded immediately, as if waiting for that question. "I'll see him. I need to talk to him." Despite her resolve, she appeared anxious. "It'll be okay, it will work out," I reassured her. She looked surprised but then smiled slightly and nodded. "John, you really are kind. Come on, anyone would do this." Mr. Stevens observed our interaction with admiration. "You both are good people. Did you say something?" "No, nothing. Jessica, let's go see your father." Despite her past with him, she seemed genuinely happy about the prospect. No matter how bad a parent might be, they're still a parent. Jessica's happiness at returning to her father was clear. Mr. Stevens thanked me and left with Jessica. John. Yes? What is it? She shook her head slightly and then smiled brightly. See you again. With that, she left. And now I'm alone again. Sitting in the now clean room, I felt a silence envelop me. The room, a small one-room apartment, felt much larger now that Jessica was gone. I never realized how lonely it was being alone all the time. Maybe that's why I stayed in hotels where I could be around people. Perhaps the clutter in my apartment was a subconscious attempt to fill the empty space. I laughed at the thought, finding it a convenient excuse. The next day, my desk was once again piled high with paperwork, and I returned to my routine of overtime and menial tasks. However, that day I was summoned to the CEO's office. Feeling anxious, I walked in to find Mr. Stevens there. He had come to see me about Jessica. I immediately asked the question that had been on my mind. How is she? Did things go well with her father? Calm down. Everything is fine. She reconciled with her father and is doing well. Thank goodness. Relief washed over me, and I let out a sigh. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. It's all thanks to you. I bowed my head in gratitude. Mr. Stevens chuckled, finding something amusing in my actions. You really are a good person, John. To be so happy for someone you spend only one night with. Well, I've decided, Mr. Thompson. I want to make a $12 million deal with him. Wait, what? You didn't hear me? I said I want to make a $12 million deal with you. But why me? I reviewed your performance records. You had excellent results up until a year ago. Since then, your record has been almost zero. You haven't been doing any significant work, have you? No, I haven't. Regardless of the reasons, from what I saw yesterday, I believe you are a good person. Your poor performance isn't due to malicious intent. Thank you for saying that. So, John, he continued. Yes? Will you take on this project? For someone who hadn't done proper work for a year to be offered such a significant contract was unprecedented. Honestly, I was happy to be appreciated like that. But at the same time, I knew it was more than I deserved. I looked at Mr. Stevens, seeking confirmation. Will you take it? He asked again, his gaze firm and unwavering. All right. If you trust me with it, I'll do it. With that, I found myself entrusted with a $12 million project. Of course, our president, Mr. Thompson, also agreed, saying, if Mr. Stevens says so, and promised to provide full support. My work life changed dramatically after that. No more endless overtime filled with menial tasks. I focused on my actual job and started leaving work on time. Colleagues who had once doubted my abilities were now surprised by my skills. I also met regularly with Mr. Stevens due to the project. During our third meeting, we discussed both work and Jessica. The project was progressing smoothly. And I received updates about her as well. She was now working as a new employee at Mr. Stevens' company and seemed happy. Oh, by the way, here's Jessica's contact information. She asked me to give it to you. I realized I hadn't asked for her contact information before. That evening, I nervously dialed the number Mr. Stevens had given me. Hello, this is Jessica. The voice on the other end felt nostalgic. Just hearing her cheerful voice was enough to satisfy me. Though our conversation started off a bit awkwardly, we soon found ourselves catching up on each other's lives. Jessica had reconciled with her father and was living happily. She sounded genuinely content with her father back in her life. One thing she told me was particularly shocking. Her father had gone to her old workplace to clear up the misunderstandings with Mike. She was seducing men? No way. He shouted angrily, confronting Mike, exposing the senior's wrongdoing, and got an apology from Mike. Even though her father had once been consumed by alcohol and gambling, he had the strength to build a good family before. The pressure must have been considerable. Imagining the scene, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Of course, I also shared my recent experiences with her. I told her about the $12 million deal I was entrusted with by Mr. Stevens and how it was progressing well. We can't let our guard down yet, but we can almost call it a success. While I was focused on my work, Tom, who used to shove all the menial tasks onto me, was now overwhelmed with work himself, making mistake after mistake. He was quickly labeled as someone who couldn't get the job done, and he even came crying to me, saying, "Please, help me." Jessica laughed heartily at this. Due to my workload, I couldn't help Tom, and he was now isolated in the office. Though it reminded me of my own past, I believed he deserved it for his actions. After sharing our updates, we made plans to meet up and then said goodnight. We continued this routine, and on our third meeting, Jessica confessed her feelings for me, and we started dating. I was thrilled but also hesitant due to our age difference. However, Jessica reassured me that she was happy with me. We didn't live together, but we spent a lot of time at each other's places, enjoying our relationship. I even met her father formally. He had a similar demeanor to Jessica, making it clear where she got her traits. Having quit alcohol and gambling, he looked much healthier. We found common interests and enjoyed our conversations whenever we met. A few years later, Jessica and I got married. During the ceremony, her father repeatedly apologized and thanked me, while Mr. Stevens, with tears in his eyes, blessed us, saying, "You'll be just fine." Reflecting on how much Mr. Stevens had done for me, I couldn't help but cry and express my gratitude repeatedly. Jessica had endured so much, but her wedding was filled with people celebrating her happiness. I realized just how loved she was. Jessica was my beacon of hope. I will never leave her alone. Clenching my fist, I made that resolution in my heart. Perhaps sensing this, she hugged me and said when we were alone, "I'll never leave you alone. I'll always be by your side." I felt a deep connection with Jessica, and my emotions surged. Following that feeling, I embraced her in return. "I won't leave you alone either. I'll make you happy." With those words, she blushed with happiness, and we shared our second kiss of the day, away from everyone else.